On this edition of The Fifth Estate, the troubling story of two brothers from Ottawa, close and loving.
Like, I remember at school, he'd always talk about his brother, how much he loved him.
With a high-powered mother.
The fact that they were kids that had been in private school, kids that had traveled the world, that had known these high levels of Canadian government through their mom.
One of the sons of the Canadian Consul General in Miami is dead. Another son is facing a murder charge tonight.
How did these two Canadian teens get caught up in Miami's deadly drug scene? One killed in a drug deal gone wrong, the other accused of being his accomplice.
He could very easily spend the rest of his life behind bars. Yes, he could.
For the first time, their mother speaks out. Can she save the only son she has left?
And that is why it is so gut-wrenching for me, because it was my baby, it was my son.
I'm Bob McEwen in Miami, with the story of one Canadian family that found itself on this sunny city's dark side. This is The Fifth Estate. For all its tropical splendor, Miami, Florida is more than fun in the sun on America's ocean playground. It is also one of the most violent North American cities in assaults, armed robberies, and homicides. You are 20 times more likely to be murdered in Miami than you are in Ottawa. So each morning, the lockup at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse is a busy place. Inmates in jumpsuits and shackles, brought here for court appearances on every kind of violent crime, as well as the usual litany of South Florida drug offenses. But on this day in May 2015, the headlines will be dominated not by a hardened criminal, by a boy from Ottawa with no previous record, barely 15, not yet old enough to drink, vote, or buy cigarettes. His name is Marc Wabafiyebazu. Someone else anxiously awaits what's to come today. Marc's mother, Roxanne Dubé. She is no stranger to stress, a senior Canadian diplomat. In fact, Canada's Consul General in Miami, now thrust into an international controversy that could impact her career and the rest of her son's life. Roxanne Dubé says she still can't believe all that has happened to her family.
He came into court with handcuffed. So in public, I hugged him. He hugged me. And I didn't know what had happened, and especially knowing Marc. Marc is such a good kid. I think if he wanted to be bad, he wouldn't know how.
One of the sons of the Canadian Consul General in Miami is dead. Another son is facing a murder charge tonight in connection with a shooting in Miami.
On that fateful day 2 months earlier, Dubé's firstborn, 17-year-old Jean, was killed in that shootout. Her younger son, 15-year-old Marc, arrested as his brother's accomplice.
Police confirmed the teens were in their mom's car, which had diplomatic plates.
Even in a city where drug deals go wrong virtually every day, given Dubé's political connections, this is a big story.
Roxanne, can we have a word with you? No,
I'm afraid not. I think Mr. O'Brien is going to speak for all of us.
David Avaya, crime reporter for the Miami Herald, has covered the case from the beginning.
The fact that they were kids that had been in private school, kids that had traveled the world, that had known these high levels of Canadian government through their mom, I think it really sort of added this, what in the world were these kids doing, and where was mom?
As they grew up, Roxanne was right there with her sons. A star student, she met her future husband at the University of Ottawa, married and had kids. The boys and their mom were a close-knit family unit, according to Ottawa friend Fred Fabi.
The two boys, they really loved their mom, and Marc was actually kind of a mama's boy in a way. Not in the way that he hid behind her and stuff, but I could tell that he liked the care that his mom gave him and stuff. And Jean loved and respected his mom.
They were both brothers and buddies, Jean and Marc, 2 years between them. Thrown together not only by birth, but by Dubé's career with foreign affairs. When she was appointed Canada's ambassador to Zimbabwe in 2005, the boys arrived in Africa knowing no one else. According to their mother, that forged a lasting bond.
When you are in the diplomatic circle you are posted abroad, the ties between siblings tend to be very close because you have to maintain that unit. And Marc was always, whenever I would, doing cookies or something, he would say, well, okay, give me some and I'll bring some to Jean as well.
After the posting in Zimbabwe came to an end in 2008, they moved back to Ottawa, into a comfortable middle-class neighborhood on the capital's west side. And both boys attended the city's top French private school, Lycée Claudel, where many students are the offspring of diplomats and bureaucrats, generally a privileged, mainstream student body. Classmate Yuma Kanate says they couldn't help noticing Marc's devotion to his big brother.
What was his relationship with Jean, his brother?
They were really close. I remember he always, he admired him, he looked up to him. I remember at school, he'd always talk about his brother, how much he loved him and everything. And he was he said that he was his brother was the person that he loved most in the world. I remember that. They were really close.
Apparently, Jean felt the same way.
And Jean used to tell Marc all the time, and he was very much his protector, forever my brother's keeper. I will always take care of you. And so that was a very exceptionally close relationship.
Give me another pepper, so we cut the tip, because the tip is the hardest part. Are you going to eat it? All right. No.
And Jean was a popular guy on campus, too.
I'm feeling it.
Fun seeker, risk taker, even if only in a dare to eat hot chili peppers. Roxanne Dubé says she believed her older son was on the verge of something big.
Jean was super smart, very outgoing, very, very confident, and he had incredible success with girls, and all of that put together made him feel that there was nothing he couldn't do.
For Jean and his brother, it was a charmed life, at least so far. They didn't know it yet, but that was about to change, as Jean's adolescence soon produced more than the usual teen angst and anxiety. As he turned 15, Jean's boyish charm and confidence seemed to be morphing into something else, something darker, more dangerous. According to his pal Fred Fabi, he began intimidating his classmates.
They were scared of him, and when I mean scared of him, but it was kind of just for some people, there was a line around him that you couldn't cross. And he drew it. He tried to put it out there. It's almost like, disrespect me, you see what's gonna happen to you.
It was an extreme makeover, not only at school, but also on social media. The good friend and model brother, now a wannabe gangster, into booze, drugs, and above all, money. His mother calls it an identity adjustment.
He was a young, black male. And the internet has many videos about, rap music with who are a bit oblivion to the justice and suggest that you can get rich fairly rapidly. And he would tell his friends, you see, one day I'm going to be rich. He wanted more and more and more and more quickly.
OG, don't smoke no cookie. Good gas. Been trapping, can't be no Ricky. Big homie, coming back so ticket. What's cracking? Barbecue, let the AK cook.
And friends say Jean showed a growing obsession with gangster rap and the thug life it glorified. His Twitter feed featured a playlist of videos like this one, with favorite rappers and recurring themes.
Don't make me call my shooter. Don't think this shit just music.
Guns, drugs, money.
Somehow, somewhere at some point, I assume he must have decided that being like these people he read about was what he wanted to do. And I'm not saying rap songs create murderers. That is not true. But I'm saying maybe that whole culture started fascinating him.
But it wasn't just videos. By age 16, Jean frequently would stray from his elite private school, skipping class to come here, a side of Ottawa seldom seen, the public housing project called Cedarwood in the city's south end. Cedarwood is notorious for gangs, guns, and drug violence. Eventually, Jean stopped going to school altogether to hang out here. Jason McKendy was one of the Cedarwood regulars. He told us he and Jean not only used drugs together, but sold them. Then, he says, life imitated rap, and they started robbing other drug dealers.
We wanted to be rich. Like, that's all we did with the money. We just bought clothes and stuff.
What drugs did he sell?
Cocaine, ecstasy.
Pot?
No.
No?
We smoked pot.
Jean's mother says she had no knowledge of how far down he had spiraled until he was charged with cocaine possession after a traffic stop in her car. Though his case was resolved with no criminal record, a desperate Roxanne knew it was time for drastic action.
He was in circles where some of the people there were in the drug trafficking business. So both his father and I were saying, okay, come back. Hopefully it's just a curve that we just boop and we can come back. And in that context, I saw Miami as an opportunity to take him out of that circle of friends and start afresh.
Roxanne Dubé had been offered a new foreign affairs posting in Miami. She hoped a move to the Sunshine State would be the golden opportunity to put her older son back on track. She became Canada's Consul General here, and when they arrived early in January 2015, it seemed to be everything she and her teenage sons had dreamed about. There's no doubt they saw Miami at its best, with a rented home in the Tony community called Pinecrest. Even Jean seemed to be on board.
I had good conversation with Jean. I felt that he just as much wanted this new beginning as I wanted it. So I was starting to tell myself, oh my God, okay, this is gonna work.
She enrolled her 17-year-old son, with his troubled past, at Miami's best private school, Gulliver, where she hoped Jean would get what he needed to qualify for college. Gulliver classmates like Dao Ji Yang seemed impressed by the new arrival from Canada.
He was in my homeroom, and sometimes we came early, just doors still locked. So yeah, I would just talk to him, talking about life and future, what do you want to do? And he told me he wanted to be a businessman.
But exactly what business did Jean have in mind? For his diplomat mother, there was still the nagging fear of her son's desire to put money above everything else.
Entertaining and being increasingly seduced by this notion of making money. He wanted to, that he always wanted to.
And it would all start coming together on March 29th at what's called the Ultra Music Festival, 3 days of electronic music and partying in Miami each spring. A scene for everyone who's anyone, with drugs virtually everywhere. For Jean Wabafiyebazu, newly arrived from Ottawa, a place to meet people, perhaps to make a connection. When the Ultra Festival ended, Jean had an appointment for the very next day, March 30th. After the break, a security camera will capture the final minutes of Jean's life.
My police, hello. What happened there?
Just shots. Everybody, there's people dead. Shots. Come on, just get over here.
Okay, you need to relax. What's your name?
Morning comes quickly in Miami, mere minutes from dark to daylight. And as March 30th dawned in 2015, Canada's Consul General Roxanne Dubé had no way of knowing her life was about to change forever. She was spending the day at home when her older son Jean asked if he could borrow her car to buy a book for school, he said, and for some fun with his younger brother before they both went back to class after spring break.
And, you know, could he go with Mark to this place they always like to go sometimes after school where they sell wonderful wings, chicken wings. And last time, Mom, last time before we go back to school, and we'll be very, last hurrah, we'll go to see a movie. And off they went.
As she watched her teenage sons drive away in her BMW with the consular plates, she had no idea what really was going on, that Jean had been asking around about where to get marijuana, a lot of it. As they drive, we wonder, what was Jean's plan? How much did Mark know? And what role, if any, would Mark have? From their house in Miami's upscale Pinecrest neighborhood, it's just a 10-minute drive to a seedy residential area where Jean pulls into this parking lot. This is actual surveillance video from a local security camera. It is 12:52 p.m. when Jean parks the BMW, backing in, it now seems clear, for a quick exit. Police say he's here for a big marijuana buy. As Jean exits the car, he's wearing a hoodie over a basketball jersey, with cash in the pockets of his jeans, an empty duffel bag, and, incredibly, 2 handguns concealed beneath his shirt. Then he heads towards a nearby apartment. Inside are 17-year-old drug dealer Joshua Wright and 4 others.
You know, they were like small-time dopers. You know, they weren't like kingpins or anything. I mean, there's a gazillion kids just like him, you know, selling marijuana small time out of a house or something.
Miami Herald crime reporter David Avaye.
You know, all these kids were pretty just sort of from different worlds, and they just collided in this just sort of spasm of violence. And it's really, even for here, it's just a bizarre story.
The security camera will roll throughout 17-year-old Jean Wabafiyebazu's final minutes, and the tragic sequence of events that could put his 15-year-old brother Mark in prison forever. Not long after Jean disappears, at 12:59, something gets Mark's attention. There's no sound on this surveillance video, but it seems clear it's something compelling, likely gunshots. He listens intently, then follows his brother towards the apartment. We don't know exactly what happens next, but the drug deal goes terribly wrong. Guns come out, and 2 17-year-olds apparently kill each other. Just after 1 p.m., there's a desperate call to 911.
Hi, police, hello.
Hi, excuse me. It's an emergency. 2 people got shot.
2 people got shot, ma'am?
Yeah, please come.
What happened there?
Shots. Everybody, there's people dead. Shots. Come on, just get over here.
Okay, you need to relax. What's your name?
After the shots, the security video shows an armed man running to a vehicle, one of the drug dealer's posse, fleeing, followed by Mark, now carrying a gun in his left hand, presumably picked up at the crime scene. But watch Mark, he doesn't shoot. Instead, he looks through the window, as if he wants to talk. As the car peels away, he appears confused. Minutes later, when the police arrive, he waves, seemingly relieved, then drops the gun. Questioned at the crime scene, examined for gunshot residue, in these police photographs, Mark seems to be stunned, whether by the shock of seeing his brother dead or dying, or perhaps for fear of what awaits him.
Chopper 4 video shows the scene shortly after 2 o'clock as police begin their investigation.
He is about to find himself the central figure in an international news story. TV helicopters are already overhead. CBS, the first on air.
Miami police responding to a call of multiple people shot at a residence on the 3600 block of Southwest 17th Terrace. At least 2 people were transported to the hospital.
And we saw a guy come out with a gun in his hand. It looked like he was shot in the shoulder. And another guy stumbling behind him was shot in the stomach.
What exactly led to the shooting is not known yet, but those who live nearby say they saw people shot and being transported.
These images capture the scene inside the apartment that day. Abandoned guns, shell casings, Jean Wabafiyebazu's basketball jersey with 4 bullet holes. The bodies, and everywhere, blood. Meanwhile, back at the house in Pinecrest, after lending her sons the car earlier that day, Roxanne Dubé spent the rest of the afternoon working at home, entirely unaware of what had happened just a few kilometers away. By dinner time, she still hadn't heard from the boys or watched the news. She tried to reach them by phone with no answer. Just before bed, she tried again.
I placed a call, maybe 10:30, 10:50, something like that, and I tried both phones and they didn't ring. So I said, okay, well, they're either finishing the movie or they're on their way back. So I went to bed.
When she awoke the next morning, she checked their rooms again, hoping against hope they'd already left for school.
I saw that their beds were undone. I saw that their pack sacks weren't there. And I said to myself, well, I'm going to drive by the school.
But then the phone rang. A senior diplomat at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, cryptically asking if her sons were all right. Eventually, she was given a phone number.
Called the number, and it was Detective Garcia, who is the lead detective on the case. And he said, I'm afraid I have bad news. I think we should meet. Do you want me to tell you now? I said, yes. And he said, Jean is dead. And I think at that point, I became in a state of shock. And that is why it is so gut-wrenching for me, because it was my baby, it was my son, and under different circumstances, he would have been a wonderful young man at 25 years old. He was very much in a place where he could have been saved. But it happened.
When we come back, she'd lost one son. Now she could lose the other. And soon she'll find herself on trial as a mother.
How is it that these kids managed to be running around Miami involved in drug deals and they'd only been here for a couple weeks?
For a 15-year-old from Ottawa, his crucial day in court begins behind the razor wire of the Miami-Dade court complex. On May 29, Marc Wabafiyebazu is perhaps the youngest inmate in the holding facility here. Shortly before 9 a.m., he's brought from the cells to the defendant's box. What's about to unfold is what Canadians never get to see. Cameras in the courtroom recording every moment of a legal proceeding where someone's life's at stake.
All right.
All right, we're here on the State of Florida versus Marc Wabafiyebazu.
It's been 2 months since that terrible afternoon in Miami, the drug deal gone wrong that left 2 young men shot to death. Marc's brother, 17-year-old Jean, and drug dealer Joshua Wright, also 17. Marc's been under arrest ever since, charged with felony murder, essentially accused of being his brother's accomplice in a plan to rob the drug dealer.
The video surveillance footage, Your Honor, supports the state's theory that the defendant is a principal to this armed robbery. The defendant is acting as a lookout.
Technically, it's a bail hearing, but both sides will reveal their strategies. The case against Marc is that he was a participant in his brother's plan, either a lookout or a getaway driver, and therefore equally guilty in the death of the drug dealer. The defense case is that Marc had no knowledge about the shooting, and therefore can't be held culpable. So, is he an accomplice or just a bystander? It is the fundamental issue in this case. And it will hinge on a confession allegedly given by Marc after he was taken to police headquarters, kept handcuffed for hours, then told his brother was dead. The key prosecution witness will be the rookie policeman assigned to drive Marc to the detention center that night, Officer Juan Velez. He describes Mark as emotional after getting the news about his brother.
He was just upset because he had just found out that his brother had died.
Okay.
Officer Velez claims that after hours of silence at the police station, Mark blurted out everything to him. 23 separate facts about the case, Velez says, in that 2-minute drive.
You know, it was a job gone wrong. He tells me that his brother was smart, and that they've done this on numerous occasions, and that it wasn't supposed to go like that, and they were there to rob from the people from their narcotics.
They were there to rob the people of their narcotics.
Yeah.
But the alleged confession was not recorded on video, and Juan Velez admits he told Mark nothing about his right to remain silent or to get a lawyer. In fact, the only video that does exist is this ubiquitous surveillance footage from the parking lot next to the drug dealer's apartment. Remember what this shows. When Jean leaves the car, Mark is waiting in the passenger seat. Strange if he's supposed to be the getaway driver. What's more, if he's the lookout, he's unarmed. By the time he hears the gunshots and goes in search of Jean, his brother and the drug dealer already are mortally wounded. When Mark emerges with a gun he apparently picked up at the apartment, he isn't seen firing it, let alone killing anyone.
What do you see in his movements?
A confused child. He was not a lookout, I can tell you that. And then he heard the gunshot. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't know what to do. So he came out of the car, looked around, looked at the fence, came back into the car. He had no role.
Defense attorney Kurt Obrant maintains that Mark's actions simply don't meet the legal definition of the crime.
If the person is not a participant in the underlying criminal conduct, then they are not guilty of felony murder.
So presence alone is not a characteristic that would absolutely qualify somebody to be charged under the felony murder statute.
That's right. Being there, and even with knowledge that a crime is being committed, isn't enough. You have to be a participant.
So was Mark a participant? Judge Teresa Pooler chooses to believe the police version of events that day.
Based on the statements made to Officer Velez, as well as the other evidence in this case, this court finds, as to the charges contained in the indictment regarding Mr. Wabafiyebazu, the proof of guilt is evident.
The proof of guilt is evident. In other words, the judge believes the testimony about that alleged confession is enough to send the Ottawa teenager to trial for murder. The question now, should Marc Wabafiyebazu be released on bail while awaiting trial, or kept behind bars for months, or even longer? With one son dead, the other under arrest, when Roxanne Dubé takes the witness stand, she seems on trial herself, about to face relentless questions about her role as a mother.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Mr. Dubé.
Good afternoon.
The court hears that 17-year-old Jean somehow acquired cash and guns for that marijuana buy on March 30th. What did Dubé know about that?
Were you aware that they had firearms?
No.
Do you have any idea where they would have gotten those?
No.
Did you ever see any firearms in your home?
No.
And the prosecutor hones in on her knowledge of when her son skipped school. Not only Jean, but 15-year-old Mark, too.
For example, when Mark was not in school and he was not in class, did you know where he was?
I would say most of the time I did.
It may seem a minor point in a murder case, but to many, do you know where your children are, is the litmus test for parenting. And Roxanne Dubé seems to be failing, both in court and public opinion.
But I think any parent would wonder, well, why weren't the kids being supervised more?
Crime reporter David Avaye was in court for Dubé's testimony.
How is it that these kids managed to be running around Miami involved in drug deals and they'd only been here for a couple weeks? So I think there was sort of a real sense of almost, I don't would say outrage, but there was a sort of sense of, how was it that she allowed her kids to sort of run all over the place?
And the judge evidently feels the same way.
She was not aware of the amount of time that they had skipped school. She did not know where they obtained $2,800 or more money to get involved with this drug deal. She did not know where they would obtain guns.
It is not going well on the stand, but Dubé's mission now at the bail hearing is to convince the judge to give her and her son another chance.
Marc is the son that every parent would want to have, but I'm just lucky that his father and I have him. He's a good boy. He never had any issue whatsoever with behavior in school.
Right treatment.
The key remaining issue is flight risk. She pleads for Marc to be given house arrest with her, rather than remain in detention alongside hardened adult criminals. She insists she would never flee back to Canada with Marc.
I will keep that word.
This notion that I might flee. Why would I want to do that with my son? Why would I want to do that? He would be into the criminal record forever, so would I. My diplomatic career would be over. And for what? When I know that all of the evidence we have before us will prove his innocence. That's my view.
But the prosecution argues that even at 15, Marc should be denied bail because he's a foreign citizen and extradition from Canada would be difficult, if not impossible. Finally, the judge gives her decision.
But it seems to me it is highly unlikely that were Mr. Wabafiyebazu flee to Canada, that the United States would ever be able to bring him back and bring him to whatever justice is necessary in this case. I would also like to say, so under those circumstances, clearly I am denying him bond.
For Roxanne Dubé, a stinging rebuke of her as a mother, and the kind of recrimination any parent might feel.
She literally rubbed salt into a very open wound, which is the guilt. Because I was guilty. I had missed intuitively. I should have seen something. I should have been more firm.
You can critique the level of parenting or the controls that she had on her kids, but no one wants to see their kid get killed. Whether you're a diplomat or you're just an anonymous mother in Miami, everybody has a mother that loves them, and nobody wants to see basically two lives destroyed, an entire family's life destroyed.
When we return, if found guilty, what might be the future for Marc?
We don't have a death penalty for kids, for young kids. It's just not going to happen. But he could very easily spend the rest of his life behind bars. Yes, he could.
For 6 months, it's been one family's nightmare. Two brothers torn apart, one dead, the other fighting for his freedom. Early in November, friends and classmates from Marc Wabafiyebazu's school in Ottawa, Lycée Claudel, came together, horrified by the harsh reality that the 15-year-old could receive a life sentence in Florida.
Marc was loved by all his friends, and we miss him terribly. Please give us the opportunity to be part of his life again and release him to his community while he is awaiting a just and fair trial.
More than 100 people would sign a petition that evening, asking Florida authorities to send Marc back home. But that would require an act of clemency rarely found in Florida courts. The state of Florida tries more juveniles as adults than any other state in the U.S. or other Western countries. What's more, the vast majority of those juveniles are ordered treated as adults unilaterally, without judicial approval, by the very prosecutors trying to put them behind bars in the first place. In Marc's case, possibly for the rest of his life.
What does it take, though, for a 15-year-old who's in that position to be tried as an adult?
Well, unfortunately for the 15-year-old, it's not going to take a lot. It really isn't, because our laws here in the state of Florida are very, very, very strict, especially when it comes to murder.
Joe Shalacy spent 30 years as a homicide detective and narcotics agent in Miami. He says Florida's justice system is specifically designed as a deterrent, making examples of kids like Marc Wabafiyebazu.
We don't have a death penalty for kids, for young kids. It's just not going to happen. But he could very easily spend the rest of his life behind bars. Yes, he could.
When I first got to adult court, my first plea offer was 15 years. Being 16, that's scary.
In Florida, it is so systemic that the international organization Human Rights Watch published a report citing the lifelong consequences for thousands of children tried by the state as adults every year, effectively branded as adult felons forever, often for low-level offenses and nonviolent crimes. And the United States is the only country in the Western world to sentence children to life in prison. Now, Ottawa's Marc Wabafiyebazu, charged as an adult with felony murder, could be one of them.
When you visit Marc, when you talk to his mother, what can you say to them in a situation like this?
Keep the faith. And I believe that they do. That's what, in my humble opinion, keeps us going. Faith.
Even if it's a system that has charged this 15-year-old, could put him in prison for life.
That's right.
As Marc's lawyers work on a possible plea deal, he continues to await trial in custody. Not in Miami's juvenile detention facility, but at its main county jail. The one with over 1,000 inmates behind its walls, every kind of offender. And while Marc remains locked inside here, the case against him in court gets even more grave.
2 drug dealers who were involved in a shooting that left the son of a Canadian diplomat dead and his brother charged with murder won't be heading to jail.
The 2 surviving drug dealers in the shootout on March 30th, one ran the drug house, the other brought the drugs, had their felony murder charges dropped for pleading guilty to 1 drug offense apiece and for agreeing to testify against Marc.
In my experience in a case like this, my sense is, everyone sort of plays the game and going through the depositions and doing this and that.
Veteran crime reporter David Avaye says it's common strategy for prosecutors to demand the toughest sentence, but settle for something short of the maximum, perhaps boot camp, house arrest, and probation.
So I can't imagine that he'll be doing life in prison. I think he'll probably, if a plea is struck down the road, I imagine it would be definitely a few years, maybe some sort of, they have youthful offender programs and stuff like that.
But for Marc's mother, the thought her younger son could be taken away for years after losing her older boy forever is too awful to bear. She insists Marc's innocent, but told the court she's willing to consider some middle ground.
Do you think that there's any suitable punishment in this particular case at all, or do you believe because your child is innocent that there is no punishment?
I could see that he might benefit from some kind of boot camp or some place where he can go and think and be kind of in a more rigorous system. 6 months, a year, I don't know. I would think that would be reasonable.
On leave as Consul General, Roxanne Dubé speaks with Marc each day and visits him every week.
I'll be here and I'll just wait to hear from you. Okay? Gros serré. Je t'aime beaucoup. Okay, bye-bye.
Though he's among the youngest at the county jail, she says he often counsels other inmates, especially other kids.
And he has shown an incredible ability to adapt because he has countless time shown to me that he has compassion for the other people who he lives with.
And from the beginning, she says he's comforted her as much as she has him.
And that day, this was only the second day, he said, "And how are you?" And I just felt, how can he wonder about me when he's going through such an ordeal?
Recently, friends produced this video memoir of Marc's big brother, Jean, still trying to come to grips themselves with what happened and why.
The one moment that I thought was very poignant was his defense attorney gave him a picture of his brother, and he was just sitting there in the defendant's box, just sort of looking at a picture of his brother very wistfully, you know.
This is that picture. It is likely no one remembers or misses Jean more than Marc.
That was sort of a poignant moment because there's no one else in the courtroom. You know, he just looks like a kid still, you know.
It is the tragic tale of a family from Ottawa. One son gone, another fighting for his freedom, a mother lost in the trial of her life.